Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to an all-new episode of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. We have a very, very special episode, and it's crazy to think that 189 matches into The Payoff, we're doing something completely unique, first time ever, making history this week, Jeff.
Yeah, this is great. You know, no better week, of course. The road comes to an end this Saturday and Sunday. Not for the payoff, of course. We still got a little bit more WrestleMania to talk about. But what better time to talk about this match than WrestleMania week, you know?
And we're going to make it really unique because of the length of this match and then obviously shenanigans after the 60 minutes. We're just going to jump right into hitting play, and then we will talk about the build, the payoff, and the aftermath all during this match. So hit play, join us for this thing, and we're just going to walk through everything related to WrestleMania 12 Iron Man match. I am so pumped up to talk about this show, about these two guys. We have so many notes, so many things to talk about. This is, I think, Jeff, this could be one of our best episodes ever.
I agree. Absolutely.
So we are at the 1 hour and 36 minute mark of WrestleMania 12. 1 hour and 36 minutes. You heard this right. The main event is starting an hour and a half into the show. Crazy to think about. So hit play, join us, and we'll get started. I'll count us down to hit play, and you'll hear the audio on 3, 2, 1.
In that case, that's his son, Blade. Blade, who was at the Slammies just last night, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so Bret gives the glasses to his son. If you remember correctly, his son was a Shawn Michaels mark. So his son had Shawn Michaels gear, was a big Shawn Michaels fan. Interestingly enough, I don't know how many kids Bret has, but none of them got into the business. You know, it's funny, for as many Hart kids as there are, and grandkids and hell, probably great grandkids at this point, there's really not that many in the business. I mean, you have Natalia, you have Teddy Hart, who, you know, obviously, have you watched that documentary, by the way?
I have, yes.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so you have him. I mean, who else do you have?
I think there's a lot that we just don't think of, too. So, like, Bret is a kid. Yeah.
You know, obviously, behind the scenes, you have
Kurt Hennig. Yeah. Oh my gosh, his name's escaped. Kurt Hennig's son. Yeah.
No. I was going to say Natalia's husband.
Oh, Tyson Kidd. Yeah.
So there's some lineage there, but I mean, for as many kids and grandkids as there are, it's hard to believe that, you know, again, Owen's son didn't get into wrestling, or any of Bret's kids, or, you know, Bruce was a wrestler. I mean, all these guys had all these kids. It's just hard to believe. I mean, it's a little hard to believe, and none of the women really, you know. So anyways, and again, I know they're not still operating a promotion in Dungeon and all that stuff, but anyways, so we're here, WrestleMania 12, Iron Man match. Nothing like this had ever really been done before, certainly not on this stage. But I mean, if there were two guys that you were ever going to do this with, it was Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. It wasn't Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. It wasn't Yokozuna, right? I mean, you know, these were the two guys that you could actually do something like this with. Starting out very slow, Bret, traditional black and pink. Shawn, just one of my all-time favorite outfits. You know, this is in a lot of ways my favorite Shawn Michaels match moment, you know, whatever you want to call it. So, Jeff, I've sent you the picture, but I have on display my favorite wrestlers of all time They're action figures, and then they're in the gear of my favorite moment. So this is the Shawn Michaels one that I have. But yeah, they're starting out really slowly here. Again, they're going to periodically put up the clock and the pinfalls. It's not on screen the whole time. Vince McMahon on commentary. I don't know what it was, but I thought this was one of Vince's best jobs on commentary ever. He was just very much, in the moment, and especially at the end, it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was Vince and JR, actually, or not JR, excuse me, Jerry Lawler. And so, yeah, to kind of set the stage on this one a little bit of, we've got Vince, as we already heard, and Jerry Lawler on commentary. I saw a lot of and we're going to get into the reviews on this one too. We're not spoiling anything for anybody, I don't think, but say he really kept people in the match as well too. So I think both of them really up to the task on this one of making sure that this was, a good match, and especially for the people at home, that they could stay engaged in this. And so something else to kind of set up a little bit here too is we have heard the name, but we haven't really talked about it much. That Jose Lothario is also in Shawn's corner on this one. I don't know. I was kind of curious, and since we had the time today, I actually did pull a little bit just about Jose Lothario, because I was curious too. And so he spent a little bit of time actually most of his time actually in NWA. I didn't realize this actually. At one point, he had a 50-match win streak, 5-0. And so extremely successful over there. He had a lot of storylines.
Texas, Mexico, both.
And so he was actually a boxer and a wrestler too, but had some, Dusty Rhodes had some back and forth with him as well too in the 70s. Dory Funk Jr., Chief Jay Strongbow. So like a lot of these big names that, from back in the day that we all remember. And so had some random kind of, tag belts throughout the years as well too. It was actually NWA had their own, it was the Florida kind of area. They had their tag belts. He won that a little bit. So just he was very successful, but as more of us know that he is the one that trained Shawn Michaels in the 80s. And so later becoming his manager, of course, on TV, there with him when he won that championship at here, continued on, just different things, just a lot. And so I didn't realize he was actually, while we are used to seeing him in like the mid to late 90s, associated with Shawn Michaels, he actually didn't die until 2018. And so he's 84 years old. And so he had been around for quite a while. So, but he debuted in 56, and his retirement, if you will, from the industry was 99. And so crazy to think like 40 years involved, doing this, which is just insane. So, but a little bit on Jose Lothario there.
Well, let's go back to the card.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll kind of work through the setup for this show, and then for the build to this match, which obviously is fantastic. And Jeff, it's interesting because and I've been thinking a lot about this, of just kind of the spectacle of WrestleManias 1 through 10, right? So 1, it's the first one, Madison Square Garden. We've thrown every celebrity and, thing we can at this. WrestleMania 2, gosh, to this day is still ambitious. 3 different locations. I wonder if they ever try that again. Probably not, because, of the centralization of WrestleMania and all the events that go into it. But, simulcasting from 3 different places in 1985 or 86, whatever year that was, that's just insane. It's insane to think about today. They had a hell of a time broadcasting Raw from the Manhattan Center in Barclays. And meanwhile, WrestleMania 2, they're doing that. 3's in the Silverdome. 4 and 5, Trump Plaza, the casino, and, just a kind of unique building. And, both those shows were fantastic. 6, you've got the first babyface match. You've got title versus title, Skydome. 7, Indy. I mean, that was a big building, dome show. I'm sorry, 7, LA. LA with the backdrop of the USA. I mean, originally that was supposed to be in the damn Coliseum. So, but still, that arena looked a lot different. 8 in Indy, 9 Caesars Palace, 10 Madison Square Garden. So all of those were unique, right? All of those had something pretty special to them. So we get to 11. Jeff, 11's in Hartford, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And it was really a commentary of how down in the dumps the business was at the time. You know, they did it to save money. It was still kind of New York, and you kind of, so they just showed us Stu Hart and Freddie Blassie on screen. I did not know that Stu Hart was there. I didn't remember that or know that. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I did not remember that. So, 11's in Hartford. 12, we're in Anaheim. Jeff, I don't know if I'd ever heard of Anaheim before. I'm 12 years old. Maybe the, Mighty Ducks were a team at that point. Maybe, I guess, the Anaheim Angels were, I think, California Angels. So it's just a weird place. I'm like, what's Anaheim, right? So they're not in LA, but they're trying to kind of pretend they're in LA. Just like last year, they were in Hartford, but they're trying to pretend they're in New York. So just a really odd choice. And I guess it was the Pond, so they probably, the Mighty Ducks were already playing there at that point. So March 31st, 1996, everything's built around this Iron Man match. And this was still the time, Jeff, where most of these WrestleManias were one-match shows. The Mega Powers are exploding. Hogan and Andre, Warrior and Hogan, et cetera, et cetera. We had the double main event for WrestleMania 8, but most of these were really around one central match. This obviously was no different. That really wouldn't go away until a number of years later. So it's built around this, but it's a fun show because there's other pretty interesting things happening here. The Warrior coming back. I mean, that had been 4 years since he had been there. Mm-hmm. But let's just go through the card. I don't know. So we start off the dark match, Body Donnas and the Godwins. 5 minutes, Body Donnas would win the match. Hillbilly with the Godwins, Sonny with the Body Donnas. Then they also did that Huckster versus Nacho Man no contest. Billionaire Ted's the special guest referee. That aired on whatever they were calling the kickoff show at that time. They had been really beat that thing into the ground, and that was kind of the end of that whole thing. But remember, that's prior to the NWO. So the Huckster Nacho Man thing, they're making fun of how old WCW was. Well, little did they know that literally we're talking under 4 months later, everything's going to change and Hulk Hogan's going to be the biggest heel, going and biggest storyline and everything else. So it's kind of interesting that they were poking the bear, and little did they know that they were about to get their asses kicked for the next few years. Yeah. The show starts off the 6-man tag of Bulldog, Owen, and Vader defeating Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna. Now, originally, that was going to be Vader and Yokozuna, which would have been a spectacle, and certainly an interesting thing. We've talked about this before. Vader he was hurt. And he wasn't the Vader that, we've covered some matches of and we've seen, and unfortunately what could have been. I mean, obviously he would go on to face Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam this year, but that kind of fizzled out. And, Vader could have been a monster heel with a really nice title run, even if Shawn eventually got it back, going into WrestleMania 13. It just wasn't meant to happen. But, part of it, and again, I know that like Bruce has talked about it on his podcast, but, they just say, oh, Vader wasn't the old Vader and this and that. Yeah, but the booking also sucked. So remember, they bring this guy in as a monster at Royal Rumble. He beats the shit out of Shawn Michaels, who was, arguably already your biggest baby face. And then then you have him attack Gorilla Monsoon. And then what do? Well, you throw him in some bullshit opening match 6-man tag. Like, you couldn't have found one guy on the roster for Vader to just destroy. Or, I mean, again, you could have put him in a program with Jake Roberts Ahmed Johnson. You could have just had him squash Yokozuna if you really wanted to get Vader over, right? I mean, there's guys on the roster you could have done this with. And gosh, Jeff, you just look at this card and you realize how thin the roster was at the time too, right? Because, we only have matches, and some of these guys are part-timers. So, then we have the Roddy Piper Gold Dust. Roddy Piper is going to win the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. Probably something you and I should cover maybe next year. That's a fun one. And it was what it was. I thought it was fun. They beat the shit out of each other. No complaints there. Steve Austin's going to defeat Savio Vega in 10 minutes. And just think, a year later, Bret Hart. So a lot would happen over the course of 1996 for Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get the 4-year return of the Ultimate Warrior. Say what you want about the guy, but and you may cover this when you're talking about the reviews. Meltzer said this was the biggest pop of the night. Not Shawn Michaels, not Bret Hart, not The Undertaker, the Ultimate Warrior. And it wasn't a surprise. Yep. You knew he was coming out. The guy was over. And if him and Vince saw eye to eye, the Ultimate Warrior could have, had a much different run. Remember, he was gone from mid-92 until early 96, and then he's out the door again very soon. And you just and we say this about a lot of people. We say this about, Bret Hart if he would have stayed longer, but is there a place in the Attitude Era for an Ultimate Warrior? That's a tough one. But gosh, maybe. Maybe he changes his gimmick a little bit. What could have been? Is there a place, and I think even more so for the Macho Man. Like, I could have easily seen the Macho Man just change his look and go toe-to-toe with Steve Austin. So, and then we have The Undertaker defeating Diesel. At this point, we know Diesel's going to be on his way out, so he does the favors for The Undertaker. The Undertaker streak continues, 16-minute match. And then the reason we're here, the Iron Man match. So there's not a lot on this show. There's really not. But again, it's WrestleMania. It's LA. One of the other things about this show is, and it's just interesting, right? I mean, it's just kind of how the wind blows with Vince McMahon. Really no celebrities on this show. So you have no Hulk Hogan, not that you had him last year either, but you have no Hulk Hogan, you have no Macho Man, you have no celebrities. Just a very different WrestleMania. We're in Anaheim. So interesting. That's it.
Yeah.
That's our show. And let's talk a little bit about the match here. And again, not a ton happening, but we're inside the ring, we're outside the ring, some high flying stuff, a lot of mat wrestling. And again, I doubt I'm spoiling this for anyone, but the strategy was, let's not have a bunch of pinfalls. And it was doing this match in and of itself was very bold. Doing it the way they did was, it took balls to say, hey, let's just go an hour straight with not a bunch of pinfalls and submissions.
Yeah, and this is one where, like, kind of reading the reviews, like, we're in a rest hold right now, and we're about 15 minutes in, 16 minutes. This is the first 20 minutes for those of you that have kind of like read reviews is very, very boring. Like, it's a lot of this. It's the rest holds. It's there's just not a lot going on. You kind of wonder if they were kind of feeling each other out and kind of what was happening and stuff like that. And so, to give a little bit of background of just how we got here, like, plain and simple, that's what we're always here for in the build and kind of what we're talking about. And so, I will tell you, I found one write-up. It was funny because they kind of concise said it. And so I have 3 lines and then I have about 3 pages more to discuss how we got here, because there was a lot more than just a couple sentences here. And so to sum it up briefly, it was Michaels earned the opportunity to face reigning champion Bret Hart by winning the 1996 Royal Rumble, and also defeated Owen Hart at In Your House 6 for the right to keep the WrestleMania title shot. So it's almost funny to me, like that's what, kind of, if you're reading online, that's how they describe this match and how we got here. So, and so it just kind of funny with that. So, but more than that, and so I there's so much more to this, and so you can't just say, oh, he won the Rumble, he gets a shot at Bret, he beat Owen, he still gets a shot at Bret, and so this WrestleMania taking place the end of March 31st, 1996. I'm going to kind of break down both guys. I'm going to go all the way back actually to 1994 with Michaels. And so we'll start there. Of course, he had the 10 match against Razor. We know that was the dueling Intercontinental Championships, if you will, with both of them over the ring, over the ladder. And so we had that. And then also in 94, Michaels and Diesel winning the tag titles. You had at SummerSlam Diesel losing to Razor after getting super kicked, and then of course you get that match as well too. Eventually at WrestleMania 11, which was the title match as well too, after Diesel beat Bob Backlund, and so of course Sid was involved in this as well too, and so kind of we've talked through I think all of those matches at this point, and so of course leaving for a little bit, and so coming back as the face in 1995, winning the Intercontinental Championship from Jeff Jarrett. And then, of course, the title defense against Razor at SummerSlam as well, too. So all of that leading up to, of course, the Click. And so, we've all heard the stories. We all know the kind of backstage kind of, what they did. We all know the curtain call as well, too. But a lot of real life things happening here as well, too. Of course, Michael's getting assaulted outside of the bar in New York. And so he had to give up the Intercontinental Championship. And so we all remember that. But then Dean Douglas, of course, everyone's favorite, Shane Douglas, losing the belt to Razor, and so also a member of the Click. You also then had of course, and shame on me for forgetting this. I texted you earlier, a couple of weeks ago, when the NXT and they did the fainting spot with the women's champion, and I was like, boy, I didn't even make this connection with Michael's fainting as well too. He's like, are you an idiot? Like, how did you not make that connection? And so I was, I kind of put it out of there. So of course, but that was the Owen Hart match where that happened as well too, and kind of playing up a little bit of a retirement angle with that, going into 1996, but then of course winning the Royal Rumble in 1996, the second year in a row, and so that he could take on Bret. And so Bret with this though, and so that the Click was part of what was going on backstage, but these guys, there wasn't, there was some Hart Foundation and the Rockers taking on the Bret, like these guys, there was some different stuff happening. Like there was a lull for a long time in regards to these guys having matches together outside of the occasional match, but nothing to this degree. And so, because with that, you also had, going back again a long ways with Bret having, all the way back to 94 again, you had the Survivor Series submission match. Bob Backlund, that was the throw in the towel, which just not great. And so but Bret in 1994 was Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Wrestler of the Year, and for the second straight year, just all kinds of stuff. And it was 95 actually where in Royal Rumble, he had the match with Diesel, and so that ended up being a draw because of interference and whatnot. And so dealing with that. And so you had the I Quit match, WrestleMania 11, saying that was his worst match ever. Coming from Bret, not a fan of that one. And so having, of course, the long feud with Jerry Lawler as well, too. So we're all aware of that. And so, but there was just, these guys, it was really interesting how these guys, while we always associate them together, there was a long period where these guys just weren't really like wrestling each other. And so while you might have had, as I like to say, in each other's universes, you had the Diesel Shawn stuff, you had Undertaker actually and Bret for a while there. It was actually He did take on Diesel as well too. He even wrestled Triple H or Hunter Hearst Helmsley, if you will, back in the day. And so, but one thing I had forgotten actually at this time too, like you had said, Freddie Blassie and Stu Hart sitting ringside. It was actually Roddy Piper who was commissioner at this time and said that he actually made the match for these two. And so that it would be a 60-minute match. And so I had forgotten, just through time, that Piper was commissioner at this time. And so he's actually the one that set up this match, giving us the 60 minutes. So, like I said, while you could say it's a tight, he won Rumble, so he gets to take on Bret, but and we'll talk about the behind the scenes stuff a little bit too. I left some of that out because I know we're going to discuss it separately, but these guys, there was not a whole lot of outside of we're going to go out and be sports about this, outside of the ring, these guys were not the best of buddies, plain and simple. So we all know, there was a lot of, Bret not liking just the way Shawn was, the kind of attitude, all of that. We all know Bret, really, the technical wrestler and things like that. And, I say more of a traditionalist. Even Bret nowadays still comes out and says some things that I say, it kind of, shows who he is, and not in a negative way necessarily, but just how he feels about the business, and which is interesting to me as well too. So, yeah, I'll stop for a sec. You got thoughts on any of the build or anything you want to add? Like I said, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff too.
Yeah, and in some ways, I mean, this goes back even further because you think about the matches they had in '92, and I mean, it's crazy because I just think what could have been, and you think about some of the storytelling that we're getting right now. And even previous to this, I mean, you think about the intricacies of the mega powers exploding, for instance. And as good as some of the Bret Shawn stuff was, as good as the rivalry was, it wasn't half of what it could have been. Yeah. And even, I mean, if you really think about this, and it's, hey, there's so much more that could have been shared. And some of this is the fact that, there's pros and cons of the amount of TV they produce now. And it's easy to say, gosh, there's too much TV and but it allows you to tell stories. Okay. You can tell the bloodline story in a way that you couldn't have told a story in 1996 because you just didn't have the TV time to do it. You didn't have 3 hours of Raw. You didn't have 2 hours of SmackDown. You had a weekend show, but there wasn't a lot happening on those shows. So there's so much more that could have been told here. You had Bret Hart, grew up in the business, but I had to, figure this stuff out all for myself. And Bret Hart was given all these opportunities that I wasn't. And, I mean, so there's so many things that happened prior to this. And obviously, had we not had Shawn Michaels losing his smile, had we not had the screw job, I mean, for as much as happened in this storyline, Jeff, there's 5 times more that didn't happen and couldn't happen. And there's so many more things you could have done, a trilogy, a ladder match, a Hell in a Cell match, and again, pre-Hell in a Cell, but steel cage, whatever it might have been, last man standing, best of 7. I mean, who knows? But gosh, what you could have done with these two guys, because, it's that perfect storm of they're great. Both of them are great on the mic. Both of them are super over with the fans. Both of them have great stories and things about their characters. And, and by the way, these are 2 of the top 5 in-ring performers ever, maybe. I mean, it's this perfect storm. God love Reigns and Lesnar, but there's only so much they can do between the 2 of them in the ring. These guys could have done anything. These guys could have had any type of match, any type of series. They could have done a best of 7 with 7 way different matches. Both of them were world-class heels. Both of them were world-class faces. They could, I mean, here they're babyface. I mean, this would have been better if Bret was a heel, obviously, but right. So, I mean, it's just, I say all that to say these two never scratched the surface. And I know that sounds crazy. Well, they wrestled in 92. They had this match. They had the screw job. They had the feud. There's all the back and forth. There's the sunny days. I'm telling you that's 10% of what this feud could have been. These two could have been the greatest feud in the history of professional wrestling. You'd be, Rock Austin McMahon, Hogan Andre, Hogan Savage, Steamboat Flair. They could have been as good, if not better, if it actually got to play out all the way. And remember, Bret went away for 9 months, or I guess 6 months after this.
Right.
And then he never worked, again. This would have been, keep in mind, original plan, Bret, Shawn, WrestleMania 13. Well, what's interesting about that? That had never been done before. Remember, every year was a unique matchup, a unique feud. Now, they went back to Hogan Andre as part of WrestleMania 4. And Yoko and Bret were still kind of intertwined a little bit in WrestleMania 9 and 10. But again, they had never just said, okay, this rivalry is so good, we're going to run it back. And by the time we got to 13, Bret could have been a heel. Shawn could have been a heel. One of them certainly was going to become a heel. They weren't both going to stay baby faces forever. So that's how good this was.
Yeah. So we're about 30 minutes in now at this point. Shawn's selling as Shawn does, kind of bouncing up on the center turnbuckle there. I know you have. I dug into a little bit here the history of the Iron Man.
You just said it, but man, the way Shawn sells,
it's
over the top. It's just like on that clothesline there. And again, it sounds so elementary, right? But then how come he looks better than everyone else that's ever wrestled in the business, right? There's just something about that clothesline. He didn't do a flip. He didn't oversell it. It's just like he gives up his body weight and just lets, even a smaller guy like Bret just trample him. There's just something that's so real about it. And again, it's not over the top. I as good as wrestling is right now, I still don't know if there's anyone I'd say, oh, they sell better. Even if you said, oh, Dolph Ziggler sells better. Nah, it's a little gimmicky. It's a little over.
A ref bump. Yep. Little ref bump there.
And kind of almost looked like a botch by Brad.
So, got a little bit of the history of the Iron Man match here, and I have some trivia here that I'm hoping you didn't find. And
probably not, because I feel like you're going to stump me here.
So I kind of was looking back, and I say on big shows, the first kind of Iron Man match was actually not WWF, but WCW. It was Beach Blast 1992.
That would have been Rude Steamboat?
Rude Steamboat coming in 30 minutes at 4-3 for Steamboat on this one. You then had it was a house show in 93. You had Bret and Rick going 60 minutes, which is, I say, one of the first 60-minute matches here. And then we go back to WCW in 93. This was the vacant WCW United States title. It was Dustin Rhodes against Rick Rude in a 1-1 30. And then we get this match in 1996. But I kind of dug back, and Tom, if you had to guess, it's not these two wrestlers in the ring. Who has one of the best records in Iron Man matches? And I'm including, there's of course these big ones from when it started, but there were some ones that happened at house shows all the way back to 1989 is where I was starting to find records. But who do you think has one of the best records in Iron Man matches?
I couldn't even guess. Give me Ricky Steamboat.
Well, you're way off, Tom. And so there was in between 89 and, really the better part of 89, numerous house show Iron Man matches had Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty taking on the Fabulous Rougeaus.
Really?
Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty winning almost every time. So
Shawn Michaels had a significant advantage going into this match.
Yes. And so by my count, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Iron Man matches that these two tag team wrestled in 1989.
How long were they?
And so I couldn't even find that. And so I'm guessing 30.
Yeah.
The first being August 4th. It was a house show in Montreal. And this is the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty defeated the Fabulous Rougeau brothers 3-2 in overtime. The Rougeaus won falls 1 and 2. The Rockers won 3 and 4. The Rockers won the 5th and deciding fall when Michaels reversed an inside cradle by putting Jannetty on top after Jacques had done the same moments earlier. And so this one, the second one, actually, I said 30. I'm already a liar. It said, despite the scheduled 60-minute time limit, the deciding fall in overtime was at the 45-minute mark. And so that show maybe running a little bit long there. They had another overtime match here against the Rougeaus. Overtime. So almost all of these were overtime sudden death as well, too. And there is, I'll send you the link. There is a few pictures circulating from some of these shows of the Rougeaus and Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Rockers. And so this was, and shout out to where this was. This was literally the lost WWE Iron Man matches. And sure enough, like and I was just screwing around doing my research here. And so, of course, we all know, like, some of these bigger matches that have happened. We had WrestleMania 12. There was Judgment Day. It was weird because there was actually a lull. Like WWE, like this match was 96. The next one wasn't until 2000. And like I said, Judgment Day was Triple H and The Rock. And that was, I feel like they were making up a little bit for that one because it was 6-5 on the pinfalls. So quite a bit going on there. But then TNA has actually done a lot of different matches, Iron Man matches as well too. Of course, we've just recently had the one at AEW as well too. But
did you watch the whole match?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I feel like admitting that out loud, I feel like I'm like blasphemy to loving wrestling. Like,
no, that's fine. Look, you're not going to pay $60 4 times a year, automatically. I watched it on an illegal stream the next day on YouTube.
Terrible. Oh my gosh. So, I caught that. That's how I watched parts of it. Like, yeah. And so, but while it was a good match, yeah, but also like, I don't know, like it just wasn't for me. That doesn't mean it was bad at all. Like I find it funny how so many of the reviews from that show are like, oh my God, that was the greatest show ever. It will change wrestling forever. Like, I don't agree with that. Like, that's just not a thing. So as well, too, I will say another piece of trivia here for you and those at home. While Bret, I guess, officially non-house show matches, Bret and Shawn have the most appearances in Iron Man matches. And he is a current WWE wrestler, but he's wrestled for other promotions. Do you want to take a stab at who has the next highest amount of appearances in Iron Man matches?
After Shawn?
After Shawn, yes. Bret and Shawn, yeah.
Kurt Angle?
No, Kurt Angle is he on the list? He is. He has had appearances, but lost almost all of them. It would actually be the phenomenal AJ Styles.
Oh, okay.
And so coming over from TNA. And so Kurt did get actually a win in TNA, but he has not had a win in a WWE Iron Man match involvement. So there you go. So yeah, and so just a lot of history here in regards to these matches, and I was shocked just to see that there was all these house, like 89. It's almost crazy. I'm sure that there was some territory Iron Man matches. Like Twitter let us know about it. Some historian out there that has this, but this, I was quite shocked to see just the Rockers and like Shawn and the Rougeaus. Like this was their thing in '89. Like they were doing Iron Man matches at house shows that we had no idea about that were happening. And so, and like I said, it was house show Montreal, house show Chicago, house show Philly, house show Boston, house show DC, and house show West Palm Beach, Florida. Like just crazy. So yeah. Almost had the cameraman taken out there. Of course, Shawn going over the top. I think the cameraman not realizing what was going on. So kind of bouncing off the floor. Just kind of crazy there. Yeah.
So it's interesting in the Observer around this time was the time that they WCW had that horrible uncensored pay-per-view.
Yep.
That was the one with that Doomsday Cage match. It was Hogan and Savage against 8 guys.
Yep.
But it was interesting because Meltzer said it's time for Hogan and Savage to leave. They're horrible for the company.
Mm.
I know it's rare. I know it's rare for Meltzer to be wrong.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of, let's get into the reviews on this one. Actually, we're getting into the final 20 here, where it's going to start to pick up a little bit. So I kind of want to talk through this. So
kind of gone fast, to be quite honest with you.
It really has. Yeah, I know. I'm almost shocked how fast it's gone. And so nothing too crazy, but I mean, they've been outside a lot. There's been some high flying. It's not like they're saving it all. So Shawn was number 1 in this year, 1996. Bret 16, which feels a little odd, but I guess it was gone a little bit. Shawn, most popular wrestler of this year by just a landslide. The first runner-up, Randy Savage. The second runner-up, Sid Vicious on this one. And so while most of the male fans didn't enjoy Michaels' flamboyant ways, there's no denying that Michaels had several incredible matches during the year. Matches with Owen Hart, Bret Hart, Diesel, Mankind, Vader, Goldust, and Psycho Sid made for a great year and title reign for Michaels. I would have thought Sid would have gotten a few more votes, but he had returned earlier and but had he returned earlier, he maybe would have had a different outcome. Savage didn't have a lot of major wins, but kept a strong following. This, of course, winning the match of the year. Shawn's match against Mankind actually was the runner-up on this one. The match between Mankind and Shawn seems to be the match that should have won the award based on the 4 picks. There was also Sabu and Rob Van Dam in the War Games of 1996. Though if you really think outside the box, there were a few Dean Malenko versus Rey Mysterio matches that were exciting. However, the Mind Games match between Mankind and Michaels was incredible and elevated Mankind to a top-tier level in the company he hadn't received previously. And so didn't really say much about this match. But selling the Shawn Michaels Mankind match. So getting into the behind the scenes here. So the Pro Wrestling Torch, I pulled a little bit from the previews of this match as well as what they wrote after, because I thought it was interesting what they were saying in the lead up versus after. And so the match built slowly, very slowly, and for many viewers, and this is from the Torch, built slowly for many viewers. It wasn't the type of match they were expecting. It was rarely not well executed, but the high spots were not plentiful, and the lack of falls took away a tool for generating crowd heat, something lacking throughout because the pacing was so deliberate. Bret Hart clearly dictated the style and pace of the match. Michaels, it seems safe to assume, given his pre-match hype, would have preferred a faster-paced match, but being the junior of the 2 wrestlers, went along with Bret's calls of the match. Bret kept the action on the mat for most of the match, and at a pace that, had the 2 wrestlers not been so over to begin with, would have been a pretty boring match. Less than 2 minutes later, perhaps too short a time to re-entrench the fans into the match, Michaels hit a super kick in a 60-second span to score, or hit 2 super kicks in a 60-second span to score the pinfall. After Bret left the ring and Michaels clutched the belt, Michaels did not get the overwhelming ovation he probably dreamed of. The clean finish was marred by controversy of whether going to overtime was fair to Bret. The friendship and mutual respect between Michaels and Razor was clear in their latter matches. The tension and jealousy between Michaels and Bret was clear in this match. That took away from what, all notwithstanding, was still a memorable match worthy of its main event positions, 4.25 stars.
Wow. I didn't realize he rated it that high.
Yeah. And so another one, it said, by walking out of the match without personally handing Michaels the belt, Bret may have been showing a legitimate undercurrent of legitimate heat he has over having to drop the belt to someone whom he shares personal and professional animosity and friction. There were no blow-ups backstage to confirm that the tension was a shoot, but Michaels' reaction after the match also lent credibility to that theory. And so there is some interesting things that happen after the match, so it is something to pay attention there. And so so you got Wade giving it 4.5 stars. So the Observer newsletter on this one, this is from the preview. WWE has been using and hyping Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels 1 hour as tremendous pressure on the combatants. Never before has a major promotion basically told the fans they are going to see the greatest athletic match in the history of the promotion leading up to a pay-per-view show. With expectations put at such a high level, if the two come through, it will be a match remembered for years. But if they slip up just a tad, and going 1 hour with today's style of wrestling is a lot from both men, it will be considered a disappointment. This is, of course, winning the best match of the night. I also thought it was interesting, too, that while it was very low on the list, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It got 6th place on the worst match, too. And so there was 6 matches, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches worse than it, but also to see it on the worst match is kind of interesting to me. And also the Piper Goldust match is actually got a lot of best place match votes. And so, and only 70% giving this a thumbs up, 25 thumbs down. So the big write-ups here from Meltzer on this one, and we're getting into the last 16, 15 minutes here. The WWF self-proclaimed greatest title match in history was an interesting 62 minutes. Live, despite post-show proclamations and testimonials, the crowd was largely dead for the majority of the match. Quite frankly, it was downright boring live unless one was sitting in the bottom rung of the building where the hardcore WWF maniacs were, many of whom traveled from across the country. The rest of the crowd seemingly came for the special pageantry of WrestleMania, which was non-existent, or to see the return of the Ultimate Warrior, which was barely existent but blew the roof off the place. Yep. It was more like a regular house show than a major event, with the exception of the Piper Goldust, although a very well-produced house show. Fans were leaving the building during the main event. To say they were leaving in droves would be an overstatement, but there were probably a few thousand empty seats by the time the match reached its climax.
Bullshit. I highly doubt that. There's no way that
it's packed. Look at it. Yeah.
So what? So the top just cleared out. Give me a break. I don't buy that for a second.
But there were probably a few thousand empty seats by the time the match reached its climax, and the pop for the title win couldn't compare with major babyface world title wins of the past. The lack of a build for the finish after 60 minutes of what was supposed to have been nothing but building was poor booking. Don't take any of this as a knock on Hart or Michaels. After watching the same match on television and concentrating more on their performance as opposed to the crowd's reaction to the performance, it was an excellent match. Good enough to live up to the tagline that was created for it before the match had ever started about being the greatest title match in the history of WWF. No way. Hart left the building, but Gorilla Monsoon told the ref to restart, yada, yada. And so, Meltzer gave this one 4.25 stars. So both guys, while it was interesting, and a lot of the reviews that I read was the first 20 minutes of this match weren't great. The next 20 minutes, it started to pick up. The last 20 minutes was really good. And there was a lot of people at the time, and even nowadays, some of these readings, when I'm reviews and going back, they had a lot of problems with how the overtime played out. I'm curious, Tom, because it is quick. Was it that sudden death? Could it have been better? And how would you have booked it better? Or are you happy with it?
Well, how much longer can sudden death go, right? I mean, so, okay, hey, sudden death was too short. It should have been 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. Okay, maybe, but it also could have been boring. It couldn't have gone on forever. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was fine. I mean, again, if I had to look back, could you argue? I like the way it was booked. I like the idea that, gosh, these guys are both great. it took Shawn 63 minutes to beat him. We got to see another match. This has to continue. They're pissed off at each other. Neither guy's happy. I like all of that. Could we have added some pinfalls in? Sure. I think you could have. I don't think I'd have booked it any differently, to be honest with you. I mean, just to play with it here, if you were going to do something during the match, I'd argue Shawn tapping out to the sharpshooter, Bret being pinned by the super kick. It makes both men kind of claim a small victory during the match and gives it a little more excitement. But what does it matter? So 30 minutes into the match, if, Bret had been pinned, what does that do to make the match any better?
Yeah.
Any more exciting? I just don't think it matters much. I think this actually makes more sense. I think what doesn't make sense is the opposite, which you see a lot of. Oh, okay, so you mean to tell me that Kenny Omega and Daniel Bryan, did they go to a 30 or 60-minute draw?
They did a 60. No, their first one was 30. Yeah.
But no.
I know what you're saying. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That was a 60-minute draw. Okay.
Yes.
So you mean to tell me those two do a 60-minute draw, but then if I put MJF and Daniel Bryan in a ring together, there's going to be 7 pinfalls in the same amount of time. So I actually think this is a better way to book an Iron Man. And if you wanted to do some pinfalls, I'd argue maybe you go 1-1 and it becomes like a best of 3. That makes more sense. Having 6 different, 8 different, whatever it is, decisions within an hour, when these guys don't, in a normal match, they go 30 to 40 minutes, I'm more in line with this way of booking.
I'm looking at, so the list I have is there's about 30 Iron Man matches on this list that it's spread out between AEW, TNA, Impact, and the women as well too, WCW. We'll just say 40 matches for the sake of it. From what I can tell, 3 of them were 1-0. Everything else is 5-4, 4-3, 6-5, 3-2, 3-2, 4-3, 5-4, 2-2, 1-1. Like that was that NXT match. And so I thought it was interesting because I felt like universally the reviews I was reading, and it just kind of random places too. And I like Reddit and all these other things just to see what people were saying. Like it was universally like the 0 pinfalls contributed negatively to the match, which I agree with you. Okay, so you get a pin at 20 minutes in and then 30 minutes in. In 30 minutes, it doesn't matter because then you're still 1-1. So to have it be 0-0 instead of 1-1, I think actually helps. Like I'm with you. It contributes to the match in a positive way versus like, oh, they've already done their finishers. We've seen it. Like, who cares?
Agreed.
So we're in the final 10 now. This match has flown by. It was like, even I was thinking like, man, when we were saying we were going to do this match, I was like, oh boy, we got to buckle up. Like we've gone 50 minutes already. This is crazy. And so
look, you've heard me say this before, but you can't look at this match and you can compare it to today. Okay. And I obviously I think it holds up great. You may say, oh, well, MJF and Daniel Bryan was more exciting. Well, this is 1996. That's 2023. You're talking about almost 30-year difference.
Yep.
So
you can't compare. Yep.
Yeah, it's just it's a different era. It's a different style. But I mean, again, you have to understand in this era how ridiculously amazing this match is. And I think you have to do it both ways. Like I think it's no different with sports sometimes where yes, today's athletes are faster and stronger, So, it's always, it's a tough thing to do. But man, for this being 30 years ago, for it to be this good at that time, I mean, there were a lot of moves in this match you didn't see a whole heck of a lot of. And, these guys could do anything.
Something I have not brought up, and I'm ashamed that I haven't said it yet to this point is this, and we didn't show it, but please go back and watch it. Is this the greatest Shawn Michaels entrance ever? And this is, of course, him coming down on the zip line, the classic, look from behind and the camera flashes everywhere. Was this the best, or where would you rank this in regards to Michaels? Yeah.
The only one that immediately comes to mind that I could argue was better was WrestleMania 25, the all white coming down, and then the music hits. That was pretty awesome too.
Yeah, and this is, of course, one of the write-ups. I thought it was funny because they're like, this, and for those at home, we started the match right at the bell, but go back and watch kind of the 10, 15 minutes before this match because it does set it up well. I felt like it was very, this set up both wrestlers perfect because Bret came in just the old style through the ramp, kind of had the glasses, and you have Shawn literally coming down from the rafters, sparkling, just the two personas, completely on display and couldn't be any better. Yeah.
It was also one of the few times they ever put anything on the mat. I think WCW did that more often, but this was, and they did it so they could sell the mats. And I actually just found one on eBay the other day. It was going for $780.
A full mat?
No, a piece of this mat.
Got it.
Something, and then Shawn Michaels signed it.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Speaking of which,
yeah,
my trivia question for you.
Oh yeah, you built it up for me the other day. Yeah, what do you got?
In the collecting world, there is a holy grail of collectible chairs, collectible ringside chairs.
Okay.
What event is that from?
Was it a ringside chair or was it
ringside chair to an event?
I'm going to say, this?
It was only for the first 5 rows. There's only 500 of them. This was the first event that they ever did the ringside chairs at.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know. It's because there's a few.
WrestleMania 10.
Was it? Okay.
WrestleMania 10, first 5 rows, 500 chairs. The holy grail of chair collecting, handful of them on eBay. The cheapest one had a $750. Then there was one that was over $1,000.
So are we talking signed or unsigned? Because I know the main event there was not
unsigned. It says one of 500 on unsigned.
Interesting. Okay. Yep. I wonder. Because I have when we had our visit to the Performance Center, we were gifted those at this point got to be worth a decent penny as well too, because there's only so many of them and the wrestlers that were there at the time. That was a snapshot of who was there and who wasn't. Yep.
Well, and the way to do that WrestleMania 10 chair is if you could have had Scott Hall and Shawn Michaels sign it.
That's why I said because the main event was Bret and Yoko, so it's really okay, whatever, not fantastic, but unless you got Owen and Bret to sign it, you went with the opening match there, that would be crazy too. But yeah, so yeah. All right, so we're final 4 minutes here now. The pace has really picked up.
Yes.
In the last kind of 10 minutes, really 5-10 minutes. Both guys look just incredibly drained, but still working hard.
He looks probably drained too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man, he took a bump, 30 minutes ago. He's still recovering. This is just, yep. And so these guys, oh boy, just huge, kind of jumping off the rope. Fans seem to be a little bit more into it now. I see a little bit more clapping and things happen.
Have you watched this year's A&E documentaries yet?
Not yet. Nope. I still need to.
So I've watched, I guess, the first two, NWO and Jake the Snake.
Okay.
Jake was excellent.
Anything on him is great. Yep.
Nothing new from NWO really. Good. I mean, it's still fun to watch, but
right.
Jake was excellent. I didn't realize, I mean, he's been sober now for like 10 years.
Yeah, with DDP and all this other stuff. He's been
like factoring in some regressions or whatever, but he's been sober for 10 years. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it totally. I get they put him with Lance Archer, which he probably, had a good connection with Lance Archer in AEW. I think the fact that they're not using him more, like almost in like a Heyman role, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like he should be out there every week putting somebody over, that's the way to do it. Like Sting's having the matches with Darby and stuff like that. And Jake, can't have the matches, but man, like on the mic, he's still phenomenal.
Yeah, and it may be more that they put him with, Archer as opposed to someone else. I'll tell you, and not that he needs them, but man, could you imagine like a Jake combo with Moxley?
Oh yeah.
Right. I think you're exactly right. Like, how are you not using Jake? I mean, I'd love to see him in a weekly role. Again, there's so much value these guys can talk. Okay. Mm-hmm. And some of it's just as you get older in life. Like I would be better at cutting a promo now than when I was 23 years old, if I had to kind of write my own stuff. So like they get better. But you watch like Cena with Theory. Oh my God. You're like better than anyone on the roster.
Oh my God, yeah.
Time and perspective. I mean, if The Rock came back, he'd do a great promo. Austin, I mean, some of them is they were just great in their day, but some of it is with some, gray hairs or whatever. You can really do, just some great promos. And so it's like, man, like Jake, like, and you want to get casual fans to watch AEW because it's just your hardcore fans that watch. Getting involved would be a good idea.
Well, and certain wrestlers can
We're
say
down to
things.
A minute, and like, Bret's out. Shawn's trying to get to the top rope. I mean, they are just, and what Meltzer said, 8,000 people have left the building at this point.
Yeah, thousands.
Yeah, we don't see an empty seat.
Sure doesn't sound like it. Like
50 seconds.
Unless they just happen to all be opposite the hard cam.
43, 42, 41. Bret Hart barely standing and he caught it! Sharpshooter! He got it!
So he lost the sharpshooter at 32.
Caught Bret coming off the top, or caught Shawn coming off the top rope, and now the sharpshooter's locked in.
But it shows you how tough it is.
Bret Hart was just right there!
Because like everyone's standing there, so some people are cheering for him, some aren't.
Lower back has to be screaming in pain! Michael's trying to hang on! He gave up! No, not yet! No! No, 4, 3, 2, 1! He gave up! Bret Hart, I don't think so!
You would assume that, it's tough because it's like maybe the tie should go to the champion. So the sudden death thing kind of doesn't make sense, but again, Gorilla Monsoon's there.
I'm interested how this plays out because I've read enough, but yeah, here comes Gorilla almost immediately into
Gorilla
the ring.
Monsoon's one that I'd love an A&E documentary for. So Bret's leaving the ring.
Bret's out. He's got the belt. He's out of here.
Gone the full 60-minute time limit. But Gorilla Monsoon, is it going to end like this? What a match. Gorilla Monsoon talking to the officials. Howard Finkel, ring announcer. Earl Hebner, the official.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. The 60-minute time limit has expired. However, this match has been ordered to continue under sudden
Bret Mouth and why
rules. There must be a winner.
All right, so they're going back in the ring. Bret's pissed, kind of like the heel thing, which is good. But this shows you babyface versus babyface is tough because it's like, so they say, oh, well, the pop when Shawn wins wasn't louder. Well, part of it is because some people were cheering for Bret. Oh, well, so-and-so got a bigger pop. Yeah, because they beat a heel. So, that you have to take that into consideration. Everyone's standing. They're super engaged. It's just going to be that some people are conflicted. Some people are Bret fans. It's not a, Shawn isn't beating a monster heel, which is why babyface is tough. So Shawn's getting up. Bret's pissed.
Bring the bell. Bret's like, let's go.
I can tell you right now, Bret Hart does not like this decision, and he's going to take it out on Shawn Michaels. He'll make sure.
We know what happened in the aftermath here, but I have before this one ends. What if it had just ended?
Oh God, horrible! Horrible.
What would have happened after this if Bret kept the belt?
Business would have cratered. That's what would have happened. People wouldn't have watched Raw the next day.
Big backflip there from Bret onto Shawn.
Well, the other problem too is, let's say you end this at a tie. Okay, let's say you did this. Where do you go with it? Obviously,
yeah, that was the thought I had too. Yeah,
but it's like, what's your? I mean, last man standing. I mean, they didn't even have those back then. Like, how would you even take it to another level? I mean, that's the problem. Is like, there's not much nowhere you can go after this. It's interesting. Like, okay, super kick, but both men are out. But that's the question. Is like, even at WrestleMania 13, you do a rematch. What do you do to make the rematch bigger than this? I don't know. I don't know if they had done ladder matches on the house show. Maybe it's a ladder match, but that just seems kind of gimmicky for the main event of WrestleMania between these two.
Yep.
You can't do another Iron Man match. If you did best of 3, it'd be weird because it's like, well, they already went over an hour with one pinfall. I don't know what you would have done. Maybe just no DQ.
I wonder too, like, because the curtain call is not long after this. So, like, does Shawn end up taking more of the brunt at that point? Like, is Shawn Michaels getting buried? Because he doesn't have the belt at that time?
Wait a minute. Michaels said he got it. He got all of it. Michaels got all of it. Michaels in a cover. 1, 2.
It's like a pretty big pop to me.
It looks like a pretty full audience too.
Sorry, I just get a little choked up during this part.
Hey man, I know you're the Michaels mark out of us. It's okay. I'm the Bret mark.
So good. So good. But yeah, I mean that. Again, not to be nitpicky, but Shawn was just such an asshole at this point. He's like telling Bret Hart to get out. I mean, he said that, right? I mean,
yes,
he's telling Bret Hart, he's saying, get him out of the ring right now. Okay. Then he's telling Earl to get out of the ring. I think he's telling Jose that he wants, so he told Jose to get out of the ring. He's telling Bret
he came in and then 10 seconds later, Jose's out of the ring again. Yep.
See, that's Bret's son's pissed.
They're not showing Bret either. In the camera.
And Shawn Michaels being awarded the title right in front of Bret the Hitman Hart.
I mean, it sucks that like your first instinct is tell this motherfucker to get out of my ring.
Yeah.
But, like, it was just it's so real. I mean, just put yourself in his shoes. You've been on the road for 15 straight years, tag team wrestler, wanted to be world champion, wanted to be Ric Flair when you grow up. People say that you're too small, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the guy had an edge to him. He had an attitude to him. So he's like, hey, get the hell out of my ring. Like, this is my moment. And, oh, well, get over it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just his mind. I mean, it's easy for us to go, oh, well, he should have been nicer in this moment. Well, you don't know how jacked up people are, what their attitude and mindset is. And frankly, to succeed in this business, you kind of have to have an edge to you. You can't just be a nice guy. So whatever.
Right, absolutely. Well, and so the aftermath on this one briefly, we all know this ends in the screw job. But Michaels had, of course, there was the sunny days, like you said earlier, there was some of that. And so leading to this backstage kind of stuff, before that, there was the curtain call as well, too. He lost his smile as well, so there was all of that. And so, whether or not he wanted to continue or wanted to drop the belt again to Bret, that was not a thing. And so he of course said the Hart Foundation reforming as well too in the Pro Canada. So with Bret, and so of course you had Bret signing the 20-year deal as well too, and then not being able to pay it and going to WCW and doing all that. There was just and Bret had a lot of good matches. Of course he had the Stone Cold match as well too. There was the Final Four match with Vader, Undertaker, and it just there was a whole lot of stuff that happened. Of course, we started getting into the match that we've covered before with the Patriot as well too. Don't want to forget about that one. And so Bret had a lot of really good matches after this, but whether it was hanging on to the wanting to be the top guy again, and it just wasn't there. Getting into the attitude area, which Bret was not a fan of, it's just kind of crazy. And so, and then of course, we've told the screw job story so many times, we don't need to tell it again, culminating with that. So, it's Survivor Series, 1997. So, yeah.
The last thing I'll say just as we wrap up, this to me is one of the best kind of coronations that you're ever going to see. Just the on his knees and the belt and the commentary and the in the ring, and you can tell what it means to him. And the boyhood dream has come true. That's a shoot, brother. That's as real as it gets. And you don't get that many of these. Okay, I'm going to close up with that thought. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. Okay, this is a big stage, so you have to throw out all of your title changes that have happened on smaller stages, even SummerSlam, even B shows, even Raws. Okay, you kind of have to throw those out because they don't live forever like a WrestleMania moment. Then any heel champion, tell me the first time Triple H won the title. I don't remember. He was a heel. What, right? I couldn't even tell you. First time The Rock won the title, he was a heel. Okay? So big time coronations, big stages. Hogan won the title for the first time on a house show. Savage at the end of WrestleMania 4 at the Liz on the shoulder thing, and the Warrior with the 2 titles, and Shawn, when Bret won a title on a house show, they recorded it, but it was untelevised. So, you go through all these legends. Austin, big time first champion, awesome stuff. But there aren't many of those in history. So they're very, very important. We're probably, and it's so rare now, Drew McIntyre, he wins it in the Performance Center in front of no one. I could go on and on. Edge, he won it as a heel. So who got that big coronation? And we're about to get another one here with Cody.
Yeah.
Don't waste that, because you only get a handful of those in history. If you really think about it, I'm talking big time coronation. How many of those are there in history? There's not. When's the first time Flair won the title? Who knows? I don't know. Sting had a nice one the first time he won the world title, but those moments are very, very precious in professional wrestling. And
I think you're right with Cody. He's about to get it at WrestleMania, beat Rome. It's going to be gigantic. And this was too at the time. To dethrone Bret. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great show.
really good stuff, man. It's a lot of fun.
WrestleMania week. I'm glad we waited to do it because it just, it can't not be excited. Like I don't know about you, but I've told the wife, like, there is nothing on the calendar except WrestleMania this weekend. Like, we're not doing anything. I'm gonna pick up food early and just have it ready. Like, get myself some frozen shrimp and a pizza and call it a weekend. Like that's what it's gonna go down. So
mine tried suckering me into some group dinner or something. I said, absolutely not.
No way, man. Like, seriously, like,
take your boyfriend if you want to go, but I'm not.
No, but this is the time. Make sure, we will, talk about WrestleMania later, but it's exciting time in wrestling, and beginning anew. Here we go after that. So, all right, let's send, while the fans may have not necessarily gone home happy after this show, let's send ours home happy.
Yeah, great stuff. Really enjoyed it, and we appreciate the support. Enjoy WrestleMania, and we'll see you next week on an all-new episode of The Payoff.